and welcome back to At the Films with Nathan Milne. It is now time for another weekly segment of Ask, Answer and Spoil, where I shall be reading selected letters from the listeners who are curious to know about a particular story element from their favourite films. Today's theme shall be expectations and conclusions, and of course, there is no better film to use as a demonstration of my knowledge than that of Christopher Nolan's 2008 masterpiece, The Dark Knight, which is the second installment in the recent Batman reboot starring Christian Bale, Sir Michael Caine, and the late, great Heath Ledger. And for timing reasons, listeners, I shall make it clear that I will be only reading 3 of the letters that have been sent to me by the studio. The first letter of the day is from a Mr. Oswald Copperpot of Boston, who wishes to know, how does the narrative of Dark Knight close? Are the narrative expectations met or just left open completely? Now, Oswald, in reality it does depend on what you are actually hoping for when you first saw the film. Although in general, I like to think that the expectations are left open, yes. As we all know, the film ends with Batman wanting people to see him as a public menace, the fate of the villains ending in either death or arrest, the disgrace of the authorities for their lack of help with the Joker's reign of terror, and the destruction of the bat signal. As a result, it leaves open major gaps that set us up for an assumed sequel. So, Oswald, if you're the sort of viewer hoping for a happy ending, you're just going to have to wait for 2013 when Nolan releases the third and final installment of the franchise. Thank you very much, Mr. Oswald. Our next letter of the day is from a Miss Patty Hingle of New York, who asks, how does the opening and closing of Dark Knight relate to one another? Well, Pat, the first 10 minutes, I think, is set during the robbery of a bank, which we assume was a bank for mobsters. This robbery was actually a part of Joker's crazy ideas. From then on, with all the suspense, twists and curiosities, the ambitions of the viewers, which is us of course, begin to grow as we ask ourselves mentally, will the Joker get his just desserts? Will Batman live happily ever after with Rachel Dawes? Will this be the same film where we see Harvey Dent become deformed? And so on, of course. And as I've mentioned before, the ending of the film shares the same sort of curiosity and ambition that are to be answered later, thus making Nolan's directions a sort of a sandwich kind of film, if you may. Thank you very much, Patty. Rightio, and our final letter is in fact an anonymous question from a listener somewhere in Iceland. And they ask, how does the opening sequence relate to the development within the narrative? That's quite an interesting question, I must say, but all in all, it's quite an easy one to answer as well. Ha! As we all know, the plot begins to develop immediately with the bank robbery and the introduction of the Joker, and how he chooses to terrorize the community and his own henchmen. With this twist in front of us, we can easily assume that this monstrous person will ruin the lives of our leading characters as well as the city of Gotham. I hope this simple answer is to your satisfaction, whoever you are. And those were the questions that were selected by my producer. And if your letter hasn't been read out, or at least the questions haven't been to your satisfaction, I must apologize for any inconvenience. As we know, we radio announcers are quite busy. Alright then, we'll be right back after this message from the Iceberg Lounge, the coldest pub you'll ever go to.